Bessent exposed can't name a single expert who backs GOP budget. What happened in that room wasn't just an awkward pause or a political stumble. It was the moment an entire economic argument cracked in real time, and everyone watching felt the impact. Because when a Treasury Secretary, a billionaire financier, a man who built his reputation on numbers and market instincts, is asked to name just one independent expert to back a $1 trillion claim, and he freezes, that silence tells a story louder than any talking point ever could.
Downward economic turn in the U.S.
Without objection.
Thank you. This is only made worse by the Republicans' big, ugly bill and the administration's proposed budget. I have a few items I want to raise with you, Mr. Secretary, but given our limited time, I want to focus on the projected impact of the reconciliation legislation. Economists from the CBO, the JCT, the University of Pennsylvania, Yale University, the Committee for Responsible Budget, and the Bipartisan Policy Center have all projected that this legislation will add trillions of dollars to our national debt. Experts have also projected that close to 16 million Americans will lose access to their health care, and 11 million Americans will lose access to nutrition benefits. These figures aren't coming from Democratic talking points. They're coming from economic experts with years of expertise. Yet, Mr. Secretary, you have time and again gone public and said that you dispute these claims. I believe you're a very intelligent and very competent individual. You're a Yale graduate, an adjunct professor, served as the managing partner of the George Soros Fund Management Office in London, and led Key Square Capital Management, a global hedge fund, and you're a billionaire. So the question I have is, why is it that you seem intent on disavowing any and all expert opinions that are inconvenient to your political agenda? Unfortunately, it strikes me that you are hell-bent on ignoring the warnings of any independent expert whose opinions may not serve your goals. When you worked in finance and your analyst told you that a proposal was a bad idea, I suspect that you listened to your analysis and didn't just accept the deal because the person proposing it said they were wrong and that their deal was a good deal. That would be wrong, it would be irresponsible, and it would be dangerous. I would submit that in the position that you have now, it is even worse. It's more wrong, it's more irresponsible, and it's more dangerous. Mr. Secretary, can you point to one independent study, one study performed by an expert PhD economist who is not on the payroll of this administration, that says that this legislation will not add to our national debt?
Well, Congressman, if
Yes or no? Can you point to one?
if we want to look at the CBO, which
No, I'm not asking you, is there an independent expert that you can point to that says that this bill will not add to our national debt? Yes or no?
yes,
There is?
yes,
What are they?
Art Laffer,
Pardon me?
Art Laffer.
Art Laffer? Great. That, I don't think that one counts. Mr. Secretary, did the 2001 Bush tax cuts add to our debt?
Sorry.
Did the 2001 Bush tax cuts add to our debt? Yes or no?
Again, Congressman.
Yes or no?
I think it's important to look at framing here.
Okay, I'm
thing
reclaiming
that-
my time. It's
one
clear
thing
that you're not going to answer the questions that are asked. And let me make it real simple for you. The Bush tax cuts added to the debt. The second round of Bush tax cuts added to our national debt. The last Trump tax cuts added to our national debt. And every expert will tell you that the proposed Trump tax cuts will also add to our national debt. That is the honest answer, and I would have expected you could have just given us a yes or no on whether or not these preposterous tax cuts that will benefit clearly the most wealthy people, the people who don't need a tax cut in this environment, will add to our national debt. This is bad public policy. It's bad for the American taxpayers. It's bad for our economy, and it's atrocious for our future in regard to the national debt. And I yield back.
Viewers didn't need charts or partisan spin. They needed that hesitation, that uncomfortable search for a name that didn't exist. And the second Thompson leaned forward and repeated the question, the whole room shifted. You could feel the air tighten as if everyone knew the next words would decide whether the administration's entire fiscal pitch survived or collapsed on the spot. Thompson didn't wander into that exchange unprepared. He opened with a reminder of how sharply the economic outlook had shifted in just a few years. Consumer confidence sliding, markets shaken by trade wars, and global economists warning of a downturn long before the political spin even started. He wasn't making claims. He was citing the University of Michigan, shipping data, international economic organizations sounding alarms. Hard evidence, hard numbers. And all of it was the backdrop to one simple question the secretary still wasn't ready to face. Because Thompson wasn't interested in abstract theories or long speeches. He was narrowing in on the part Republicans hoped no one would notice. Every major institution that studied the GOP fiscal plan came back with the same conclusion. It adds trillions to the national debt and pushes millions of Americans off the programs that keep them alive and fed. No Democratic talking points. No cherry-picking, just a stack of bipartisan analyses pointing in the same direction. And that's when Thompson made his move. His tone sharpened. His questions got tighter. He listed the CBO, the Joint Committee on Taxation, Yale economists, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, the Bipartisan Policy Center, every one of them warning the same thing. Then he asked it, can you name one independent economist, one expert who's not on the payroll of this administration, who agrees your budget won't add to the debt? A yes or no question that demanded a name. A question so basic, so foundational to fiscal honesty, that any confident defender of the plan should have been able to answer instantly. But Bessent didn't answer instantly. He stalled. He hesitated. And when he finally spoke, the name he delivered was the last name anyone in that room expected to hear. Art Laffer. A figure whose entire legacy is tied to the same trickle-down theories that drove up deficits for decades. A figure widely criticized for being too intertwined with Republican administrations to qualify as independent in any serious economic sense. The moment the name left his mouth, the credibility of his answer evaporated. Thompson didn't need to attack. He simply replied, "That doesn't count." And in that tiny sentence, the argument collapsed. Because if the only expert available is someone whose entire worldview is built around validating tax cuts no matter the outcome, then what does that say about the strength of the policy itself? Thompson knew exactly what it said, and so did everyone listening. But he didn't stop there. He pressed forward, shifting from present to past, because history has a way of exposing what political rhetoric tries to hide. He asked about the Bush tax cuts in 2001, then 2003, then the last round of Republican tax cuts years later. Each one added to the national debt, numbers so widely documented that economists across the spectrum accept them as fact. Yet Bessent still refused to give a direct yes or no answer, dodging behind framing and context, trying to redefine the question rather than respond to it. It wasn't the kind of evasion a confident leader uses. It was the kind someone uses when the truth sitting in front of them is too inconvenient to admit aloud. And Thompson wasn't having it. His voice sharpened. He reclaimed his time. And then he laid out the truth as plainly as possible. All of these tax cuts added to the debt. The new plan will do the same. And pretending otherwise isn't just wrong. It's dangerous. What made this moment feel so heavy wasn't political theater. It was the long pattern finally catching up with itself. Because every time these cuts are sold to the public, they come wrapped in promises. The economy will grow enough to offset the cost. The wealthy need relief to stimulate investment. The deficit will magically shrink. But once the glow of press conferences fades, the numbers always tell a different story. Debt spikes. Revenues shrink. Services get squeezed. And regular families, teachers, cashiers, nurses, veterans, are the ones who pay the price when budgets tighten and programs get slashed. Thompson wasn't talking about theories. He was talking about lived consequences. He was talking about 16 million people projected to lose healthcare access. He was talking about 11 million people projected to lose the food assistance that keeps their kids from going to school hungry. These aren't abstractions. These are households with bills, with illnesses, with children who need breakfast before class. And what made Thompson's argument cut even deeper was how he framed Bessent himself. Because this isn't a man without expertise. He's a Yale graduate, a professor, a hedge fund founder, someone who built a career on analyzing risks and making decisions based on data. In finance, if your analyst warned you a deal was bad, you listened. In finance, if the numbers didn't add up, you didn't sign off and hope the markets would magically bend to your will. That's how people blow up firms. That's how fortunes disappear. But somehow, in a public role where the stakes affect millions, Bessent was acting as though expert analysis was optional, as though inconvenient math could simply be ignored. Thompson called that out not to embarrass him, but to expose the absurdity of pretending ideology can override arithmetic. It was a warning. If you wouldn't take that gamble with your own firm, why take it with the country? What happened in that room mattered because it brought the bigger picture into sharp focus. This wasn't one hearing, and it wasn't one disagreement. It was evidence that one side is building arguments on data, painful, inconvenient, stubborn data, and the other is building arguments on belief. Belief that tax cuts for the ultra-wealthy will somehow save the economy. Belief that warnings from economists can be waved away. Belief that decades of history don't apply anymore. But belief doesn't pay bills. Belief doesn't prevent debt. Belief doesn't feed families that lose benefits because projections were ignored. Thompson's message was simple. Reality doesn't care who's in office. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't bend. And right now, the reality is this plan explodes the debt, shrinks the safety net, and leaves millions vulnerable for the sake of cuts that overwhelmingly benefit people who will barely notice them. And the silence after Thompson finished spoke volumes. Because once he laid the numbers out, once he drew the pattern from past to present, the argument that these cuts pay for themselves didn't just seem weak, it seemed delusional. A wish dressed up as policy. And viewers watching saw it, felt it, understood it. What Thompson delivered wasn't just criticism, it was clarity. It was the kind of clarity that cuts through headlines and spin and exposes the stakes in terms anyone can grasp. If you want more breakdowns that unpack not just the drama of these hearings, but the real-world impact hiding behind every evasive answer and shaky talking point, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button. These moments shape the future of the country, and we're here to cut through the noise so you aren't left in the dark.